living testimony to hegemonic standards of beauty. Woman, I salute thee. For not bowing to the overseers of creative sensibility, for not pandering to the slave masters of style, for setting fire to the plantation fashion house and running to the hills and mountains of the free maroon village. Woman, you are a beacon and a sanctuary for the African self-image. It can be easy, breezy like cover girl, in a world that tells you your natural hair, hips, lips, and skin are wrong. Woman, you have a sense of where you belong. The song of the ancestors is strong in you, even if it's not that clear. You can't help but hear when your daughter looks at you with sadness in her eyes and says, "Mommy, I wish I had good hair." It was right then and there. You made up your mind that you would not be an accessory to the crime. You would not be part of the team that assaults little black girls' sense of self-esteem and turns little black boys into men who can only appreciate just a little bit of coffee in their cream. You would not get caught up in a tangled web of blonde weave, nor mesmerized by hypnotic contact-colored eyes. Not your hair nor your skin would ever be chemically Caucasianized. Your daughters and your daughters' daughters and your daughters' daughters' daughters must learn to treasure the features of their ancestors. And your sons, and your sons' sons, and your sons' sons' sons, when they picture beauty, must see you and not Barbie as the epitome. You are a rebel diva, a wardrobe warrior, a catwalk stalking Black Panther, a freedom-fighting fashionista, staging coups on all their fashion capitals. Paris, Rome, London, New York, Milan. All of them will got to come to you for their inspiration. Corporate culture will not mold you into some idealized ice queen. You are an empress of the sun with a blazing afro sheen. Bashment culture will not squeeze you into some super stripper outfit. Neither will religious fanatics drown you in a scaled-down nun's habit. You refuse to be less than authentic. You understand that the highest standard of beauty is organic, and you will never be plastic. So, if your man don't like it, let him leave you. 'Cause you's a real African rebel diva.
Giving thanks, giving thanks to Rebel Diva by the illustrious King, brother, father, Adrian Green. Always giving us something to vibrate on. And welcome everyone to another live broadcast of Building Legacy. I am always honored as Senate Dr. Chinsira Davis Kahina of Per Ankam Smai Tawi and others to be joined by my illustrious, majestic, empowering, most eloquent, yet fiery, bold African Queen Mother Warriors.
Impeccably dressed.
Check it. Check it. Impeccably dressed, of course. Read it out. Sister Dr. Sandra Richards.
Thanks, give thanks. Oh, my. Another day, another opportunity to manifest the blessings and the purpose of the Most High. What a gift. What a gift it is to be alongside my most glorious co-host. Co-host doesn't even seem, hostess, the most high priestess, my personal, beloved, reverend, precious, gorgeous, talented, intelligent, and all that African Queen Mother Warrior, Senate Dr. Chinsira
always a joy.
We have to lift each other up.
Hey, who else is gonna? You two are. Oh, you're making my heart smile.
and that's part of that whole intention. We are really looking very carefully, very cautiously, very directly, and of course boldly at how we begin to hold each other up and navigate beyond some of the limitations that define how we build legacy. From the inception of this particular broadcast, what we were able to begin to do, and we have highlighted, is to use these media networks, inclusive of Zoom, YouTube, and Facebook as well, to have our guests that are really part of the Building Legacy movement in different parts of the earth, on both sides of the Atlantic, throughout the globe, sharing on the African experience, sharing an authentic voice around revolutionary thought, as well as revolutionary action, revolutionary spirit, revolutionary mindset, consciousness, anxiousness, all of that. So we can put a life centering to everything that we're doing within our families, within our individual selves, of course, within our families, within our village, within our communities, our nations, how we embrace civilization, and doing it through a lens that is unapologetically grounded in our ancient, ancestral African, Nubian, Kushia, Kemetu heritage legacy, like our Ankh legacy, like we're speaking of the Ankh as eternal life, and pulling all of those ancestral traditions that have influenced our African experience, our encounters within the Eurasian circles and experience, our encounters that persons refer to in an indigenous space, not only indigeneity in the Americas, but indigeneity globally, and how we're able to contribute. How do we get involved in interdisciplinary and transcultural interactions? What are the things that we're building? What are the institutions that we're contributing to? Where are we learning? Where are we teaching? Where are we growing? What are we sharing? What are some of the conversations that we have with one another, and the different circles that we're doing that? What are the perspectives? How do we engage in global affairs? How do we look at these movements? How do we look at restitution and reparation and reparatory justice and authentic revolution? How are we looking at how our women, and I want to be very specific, how our women, children, and men, our families, how are we being held up? How are we being supported? How are we supporting one another and sustaining areas of respect and so forth? So this versation, and our guest, a very illustrious, very, one of the families, part of our bloodline, part of our ancestral legacy, coming out of a very powerful space, coming out of a multi-generational legacy of freedom fighters, of contributors to forward thinking and building legacies, has joined us. And I will ask our illustrious sister, Dr. Sandra Richards, to just share a few words about our illustrious sister, Queen Mother Oshana James.
I'm excited. It's just like, I'm so excited. Okay. It's almost like I have to do this at every broadcast. It would like kind of bring myself under some kind of control. Because as I read and learn about our most royal guest, I know that we are in for a complete treat, and that we are being deliberate. When we do this deliberately. Like, we are so deliberate. And I'm thrilled to introduce Queen Mother Oceana James. I've experienced Her Majesty already. I'm like, she is St. Croix born, and she is an interdisciplinary artist. Now, I'm going to take my time to read her bio, her profile carefully, because, English isn't my first language, and I can feel my spirit just getting so excited it's going to get in the way of my tongue. So Our sister Queen Mother, Oceana Drains, her work centers in minding Jumbie spaces, the in-between spaces of resistance and reclamation. Our Queen Mother Oceana has successfully shown her one-woman experimental piece for Gawi, the Deceitful Fellow, in Germany, Denmark, New York City, and St. Croix. Our beloved Queen Mother has presented her paper, Weaving Jumbie Time, Translocational Storytelling and Praxis at the Royal Danish Art Academy of Fine Arts Archives. Now, let's just, you see, when you have a guest of this caliber, one must pause and take in where this royal one is coming from. Sister Queen Mother Oceana is a core collaborator in choreographer Paloma McGregor's Building a Better Fish Trap and principal member of Sybil Kempson's Seven Daughters Performing Company, a theatre company that has just completed a 3-year residency. Ooh. Some people get to do a season. Our guest has had a 3-year residency. Oh. 12 shouts to the 10 forgotten heavens at the Whitney Museum of American Art. Queen Mother Oceana's most recent residencies have been Emerge, New York City, at the Hemispheric Institute of Performance and Politics at New York University. Wow. I mean, this is a global, divine, majestic, powerful person who we will be sitting in the, and she's incredibly humble as well, because I'm experiencing this introduction. She is incredibly humble, but we have to lift each other up.
That's right.
And so our Queen Mother grew up hearing stories, folk tales, and is proud to continue the long legacy and tradition of storytelling from the Caribbean. Please join me in giving the most warm welcome to our sister Queen Mother, Oceana James. Ah! Welcome, welcome, welcome. I am going to sit down so comfortably here and receive everything that you bring.
Oh my gosh, thank you too so much. It was like, oh, it was just so, you saw the look on my face. Sometimes, most of the time, people don't understand how you can be on stage and be performing and all of that stuff and have opinions about things and share those opinions but still be shy. Like, oh my gosh. But I'm okay. And thank you both for having me this hot afternoon.
Well, I definitely am grateful. And like I said, my short amendment, El Residencial 2018 in Carolina, Puerto Rico, where she worked with Las Nietas de Noño and other Caribbean artists.
You see, it just keeps coming.
I just said. And Migrating Histories, which was curated by another Virgin Islander right here, Monica Marin, on the Isle of St. Croix, II. And I have had the honor and privilege in earlier years, we can go back to 2004, 2005, of having the opportunity to have Sister Queen Mother Oceana James serve as one of the queens of the virgins, and was then considered the three queens, Chautauqua, and she served as a humanities scholar in addition to being the artist that represented one of our most illustrious ancestors in regard to being a queen, and that's Queen Mary Thomas of the Great Fire Burn of 1878. And to this day, when people think of Queen Mary of the fire burn of 1878, which part of Oceana there? Which part of Oceana there? So it just in terms of her bringing
Authenticity, yeah, yeah.
truth and power and authenticity to learning about Queen Mary, doing the research around Queen Mary, and really invoking the spirit, the voice, the essence to a point that we will share a little later how deep that, because it was very deep. And, so there's a portion of the film that is established from that, Queens of the Virgins. And I will definitely share a trailer after she's had a chance to just share with us some of her perspectives. So we're very, very pleased that you were able to join us, Sister Queen, Mother Oshana, because you bring so much in terms of the voice and the presence. And then we know activism is like the underpinning of everything that's being done. The pieces that you write, you're very deliberate on which performances you will do. It's not like you just do whatever. You always make sure that you bring that authenticity and voice and energy to everything. So we're just excited to have you join us and to be able to share how you're able to use the arts, in this case, the interdisciplinary arts,
Mhm.
etc., to building legacy. It's all on you. Yeah.
Ah, man, it's a lot. Thank you again. Thank you for having me. I don't even know where to start. I think maybe just a little bit of background. As you know, I was an educator in the Virgin Islands public school system, and I taught outside of public school as well. Um, but there was a point when you see that whole dynamic of the school to prison pipeline
Oh,
real life
please.
and direct in front of your face,
Woo.
year after
Now
year
you,
after year. And then those that be
woo.
denying the fact that it does exist, and you get in trouble for calling it out, or get labeled, or get, it was a lot. It was a lot. And I decided I need a break. Um, and so I had decided, oh, I need to go back to school. And so in 2013, um, it really was quick. It happened so quickly. Decided to apply, applied, came up here, did some auditions, went to Sarah Lawrence, and 2 years later, it's a 2-year program, got my MFA in performance and writing. Um, and so I can talk about my show. Maybe I'll start there. In grad school, while I was there, the George Floyd, not George Floyd, the Ferguson decision had come back.
Mm.
And my school, I was in the theater department, but I also was taking some classes in the dance department. And the decision came back, and the Black America, African people in the diaspora were shook. We just, for whatever reason, this was like one of those things that just shook us to the core. Here we go again, America. And I got to school that day, and my first class of the day just happened to be in the dance school, and the dance department had paused the day. They called all the students that were on campus to come. All the dance students, all the professors that were available came, and we had a meeting. And the dance department, the head said, "You know what? We're going to leave it up to the professors. Who wants to have class can have class, but we don't feel like we should go on without recognizing what has happened in this country." And I felt very grateful. My professor, who has since transitioned, Sister Ifeya, she was in a long battle with cancer, and had transitioned last year. But Sister Ifeya said, I'm not going to have class. And we cried, we hugged, we did all of that. So got to my next class of the day, which is in the theater department. The theater department said nothing, did nothing, no mention, nothing, as if as if people write and create work in a vacuum and not, this wouldn't affect, like, even if you want to take it from that level, not even a level of being socially responsible, but just no mention. There was no mention. And so that happened. The next day, I had this assignment due for an experimental writing class, and I was having a hard time in the class. I was like, I don't know what she wants, and blah blah blah. And this, I was complaining to another professor friend. Like, I was in her office every day. Like, I can't get this class. So I got home after that day of disappointment in the theater department, and I need to write this play because it's a workshop class, and my day to read what I'm working on is the next day, and I have nothing. And I sat on my computer and I started writing and crying because I'm affected by this Ferguson decision. And I wrote the crux of that play probably in 3 to 4 hours. Since then, I had edited and revised and took out pieces and put in pieces and all of that, but it was written in 3 hours. And that ties into what Dr. Chinzero was saying in regard to my activism. I think that I don't see a separation in the things that I do. I think they're all part of the same gut, of the same foundation. I don't see how one can create. Actually, I take that back. I do see how you can create outside of the social influences, stimuli that you're getting daily. But with intent and intentionally, I bring those things and welcome those things in my work because I just don't know how to do anything else. I don't know how. Sometimes I wish I could. Like, performing that piece is very, very, very emotionally taxing. And you know, we're going to talk about the Queen Mary experience, but it takes a lot. And so that show, I workshopped some. I had a wonderful, wonderful young actor. When I showed it for my thesis project, there was an undergrad student. It was a 2-person piece. And it's since morphed and changed into a one-woman show. When I did it at home, it was really I don't even know. It felt so good because I didn't have to explain anything. I didn't have to, people got the influences or the jokes, or they understood the call and response part without me having to say, this is the call and response part. And they brought instruments and played and talked back to me, and we were interacting, and it was in the street, and it was on the property of Venus Johannes. And Venus Johannes, just quickly, was an African woman who was, long story short, she got to St. Croix with her children. She was the quote unquote mistress, for lack of a better word, of this sea captain who had promised her freedom and the freedom of her children. And they got to St. Croix and he didn't keep that promise. And she sued him and won the freedom of herself and her children. And the property on which I did my play, my piece, was where she used to live in Freegut in Frederickstead town. So that was a real blessing. And it really, the other great part about that was that I just went to do my show. My friend, Sister Rebecca Houston, who's a fabulous stage producer and stage manager and all of that. And I've worked with her before because she had come down. I invited her down when we directed Color Purple together. So she came to assist me, and what I thought was just going to be me going to the site and being a performance turned really into this community engagement piece and durational theater, if you will. Because the site wasn't prepared. And then we had to find somebody to watch the chairs that the rental company had dropped off. And I part of my work, I do a meditative walk, and in that walk, I was picking up discarded garbage glass bottles that were on the ground, and then we came back to the site and we're rinsing out the bottles and we hung them up in the tree, and everybody just pitched in. People are driving by, oh, Shanna, what are you doing? You need anything? And then they brought this, and then my cousin came with his truck to take the bush, and then Diane Russell, I was changing at her house, and somebody else, Nana Ajwa was bringing fabric, and Sister Linda was doing this, and all of these people, no questions asked, nothing except Oshana is doing this thing, and I'm giving myself goosebumps, because it really was a testament to St. Croix and how we are as a people. I kept saying afterward, thank God I've tried my best to be good to people and to walk the right path, so that when they saw that I was in need and they needed help, or even I didn't even, it was there without any kind of drama. So it was such a blessing. And the universe happens, because here I am, the creator happens, that whole stereotype of things happen in mysterious ways, or God work in mysterious ways, whatever you want to call God. I was able to redirect my frustration at the production side, because it allowed the work to become larger than I had ever conceived of it. And that, I don't even have the words to express my gratitude.
But we hear you.
So much. Oh, can I say, as you're speaking, I feel that there is an echo, there is a ripple, there is a resonance. You speak of having been an educator and then being in that system and recognizing, actually, no, I can't be part of this. There's a part of me that's not living, so I'm going to go off and do something else. And you do the something else, and then you bring the something else to educate. So you're educating, but outside of that state system, you're actually educating in a liberty. And you're doing so, it's almost like, just listening to you, it's almost like you were giving yourself divine permission to be bigger than the school system, because of those things like the school to prison pipeline idea that exists not just in St. Croix, not just in the Americas. Africans globally are increasingly aware that some harm is being done. And if you're not a student, if you're an educator in the system, but you still have some sense of yourself, you think you can't do it. When I listened to your story, I was like, it's ancestral works. It's ancestral. When you were saying there's no separation, I'm thinking that's ancestral works. When you're saying I can't find the words, well, Senate Doctor will often say, I say it all the time, English is not our first language. It is not our first language.
It's not.
What you're doing is speaking in a language beyond English, And so when you start doing something, it's not a wonder to me that people just start joining you, because they know what you're doing without you having to tell them. Because we're all affected. We're all affected. So when I listen to you, I'm like, oh my goodness, this is phenomenal. I just had to express that. It's like you're bringing history, her story, our story forward. You're channeling, and you're bringing forward so that we can experience something that we wouldn't experience if you were stuck in that school system. I'm too excited. Senate Doctor. I'm doing it again, aren't I? Getting very excited.
This is the excitement that I am encouraging, because what it's giving me an opportunity to do is to pull just a few images. So
Mm,
persons that are viewing this, people that are hearing this, they can also embrace and feel and know. There were some excerpts we were looking for, and it's, of course, we know in my archives, I do have some of this footage, and therefore it allows me to bring this, because it was a very powerful, the community, you know, having the opportunity to be in that sacred, hallowed space of the home grounds of another illustrious ancestress, Venus Johannes. And there's a lot more, there's some of her surviving ascendants, like Dr. George A. Franklin, historian, educator, cultivator of arts and all things progressive. He was able to help us to get some of the what happened to his great 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 grandmother. And there were others that brought their legacy stories to help. And the way that the space looked was amazing. The way that people in the community, as Sister Queen Mother Oshana was sharing, everybody gave what they could give. And everybody, because we were so well, one, we were excited that she was here in general, and then, because we just love her tremendously, and we know that that type of work requires reciprocity and spiritual energy and strength and space. So we were holding space for her to be able to share with us her vision, her voice
wow.
of that space. So that's why I really dig that term, interdisciplinary artists. I really dig when persons refer, she extended the cultural griot tradition. So it was storytelling, but then she became that. And at some points, she didn't say anything. And just her presence, it was like we were seeing ancestral energy of Venus Johannes and all the ascendants in that ground. Like we were seeing, even though the house is gone, and we're just seeing ruins, we felt like we were seeing the house. We felt like
Channeling. It sounds to me like the manifestation through spirit, and that the portal is our Queen Mother. And I mean, the picture that's being painted for those of us who were not necessarily there, I think continues that work. It gives permission to one such as yourself, our cultural warriors who are connected and are on purpose and who are deliberate. Give more and more of us permission and bring forward that ancestral wisdom and energy that heals us. It legitimizes our very existence. I was like, I'm looking forward to these archived pieces that you have there for us.
And I would encourage her to speak to, like, what did you feel? How did you feel as these things were unfolding? Because we know that when you get in character, okay, those that don't know, authentic artists become that character in that time. So once they go beyond that, they've addressed, they have let you go, you're the audience, you are no longer in that sphere, and they become that performer. Like, that's not the best time to try to talk to Oshana. She's gonna talk to you in that character, in that being that she's engaged in. And that doesn't always work with everyone. Like, but I thought
it's a blessing, but it's also hard because you want, I don't even know how to explain it. Like it is, I'm glad that, I have the tools, and I make sure that people around me that have the tools to bring me back. Because there is a moment when the words are coming out your mouth and you know what you're doing, but you know that there's a presence of something else. And so it's like you have control, but not really. I don't even know how. I don't know how else to explain it. I wrote a little bit about the experience in an essay for a project that I did at Wynn Museum with Monica Marine. And it's kind of like you feel that moment when you cross over. And then in that performance, I had to leave the building. Like I couldn't even, I ran out the Great House. I couldn't stay in there. But for my show, I think that I felt proud. Like I felt that Venus Johannes was pleased. That Azunta was pleased. That Azunta quickly is the oldest relative that we have been able to trace genealogically, and she was brought to St. Croix in 1798 and sold to Annalee plantation. And my family stayed in Annalee up until the 60s. My grandmother, we were on the same plantation that Azunta was enslaved on up until the 60s, until when they moved into town, catty corner of where I was performing. And in that moment, I felt them and I felt that they were happy. And this is like hindsight looking back at it, because all those things, you know, aren't in my head when I'm performing, but in hindsight, I know that that's what I was feeling. Like really, really like I did right by them. Dr. Chen, you know, I'll never forget one time we were doing it was just me and this Queen Mary piece, and sorry, excuse me.
It's okay. We got you. We got you.
Can I just say while you're where you are, how grateful I certainly feel to be in your presence. The permission that you are giving to thousands of people you will probably never know, because we are having an experience that we can't explain.
Yeah.
This was done to us.
Yes.
And it's real. And people say, well, you know, it happened back then. Why are you so upset? It's us. It's us. It's still us. And very rarely do we get the opportunity to be in the presence of one who is as divinely ordained to do what you're doing and who is bravely doing it. And so many of us know there's something not right. When the truth is revealed to us and we know the horror, when we know English cannot help us here. when it's just so inadequate. In fact, even using English continues for me personally to cause trauma, because I can't articulate what I feel, how outraged, how betrayed, how deeply wounded. And I still seek the respect. I still seek the acknowledgement. And you represent so many of us. I want you to know that you represent so many of us. Those tears, those, what is happening with you is happening to us. And you give us permission to acknowledge something. The school system doesn't. People don't want us to talk about, oh, you know, no, we need you. And I give thanks for you. I give thanks. I pray that you continue to be guided and that people continue to bring you back and let you go and bring you back and that you're safe, always safe, because wow. So it's like, wow.
Thank you so much. It's yeah, it has been a roller coaster kind of ride. I think that I'm grateful for the people that are there to bring me back. And like you said, bring me back and let me go and bring me back. And to keep me grounded. Because when I do that kind of work, I can get a little eerie. Like I don't feel tethered.
Mm.
Um, and so I'm grateful, very, very grateful for that. As far as I wanted to say too, that as far as the piece goes, it's very non-linear at all, at all, at all. I think that I'm reminded of a story. One of the times I was in Copenhagen, there was an artist there, Sister Nana, who's doing some fabulous, fabulous work in the reclamation of African art back to Africa. She's Ghanaian. So in a conversation that we were having, she was telling me actually two things was fascinating about our interaction and time together. One, we had many conversations, but in one of the conversations, she apologized to me for the Ashanti involvement, because she's from the royal family, in the transatlantic slave trade. And I was floored by that apology. Floored. Secondly, we were talking about she had done some work and research living, I shouldn't say living with, but she done some work with Akan in a religious context with the Akan. And she was saying that she was talking to some elders and, you know, just chatting and learning from them and that whole vibe. And in her many meetings and conversations with the Akan elders, she realized that in their storytelling, you don't know when the story starts, you don't know when it finished, you don't know if they're talking about now or tomorrow or yesterday. And you're sitting there and it's all like this one thing, and you kind of have to suss out, okay, did that just happen or did it happen 50 years ago, or is it going to happen? I don't know. And so that conversation with her always stuck with me, or has stuck with me since we've had it, because it shows that we are not, it was a live example of our not being linear beings. And so in theater, in performance, which is a very Western thing, because yes, we had dancing, yes, we had performers, and yes, we had those things, but they weren't separate from our existence. So it wasn't we going to see the theater piece. The theater was in the baptisms or in the weddings or in the rites of passage or in the funerals or in the harvest or the fish coming in. The performances happened in those manners. It wasn't extracted as a separate thing. So how do we bring that back is part also of what talking about reclamation and in those spaces. How do we reclaim performance and music and art and dance and bring it back into our everyday existence, as opposed to it being something else that you just go see. And so that also was something that I was trying to do, or that I did when I did my piece at home. So for me, the performance began when I was collecting the bottles, or when I was washing the bottles, or when I went to go get fruit for the altar or the baskets, or all of that was part of the experience. It wasn't just a separate thing that, oh, now it's the beginning, the curtain opens, finished, and we clap and we go home. So how do we, the buzzword now is decolonize. So how do we decolonize the performance or the act of performing? I think that, we, as African people, I'm not just going to say Virgin Islanders, we, because of colonialism, have a hard time taking white Eurocentric Eurocentricity out of the center. So decentering the Euro-ness and replacing or putting it back in the African. How do we do that? And that's at the undergirth of any work that I do. How do we take, Toni Morrison called it the little white man on our shoulder. How do we take him off and say what we have to say to our people? Other people can enjoy it, but my work is for our people.
I mean, I don't know. Senate Doctor will no doubt jump in, but for me, what you're saying is the question that many of us are asking. And what is the price that we pay if we are in a Eurocentric institution?
Yes.
For doing this.
Yes.
Is there a part of us that dies, that suffocates and dies if we stay in the institution doing what the Eurocentric model tells us to do? When we know that there's the very core of us is yearning to be authentic without apology. So we know that there's an alternative way of being. We've been through the system. We are sufficiently connected with our ancestry. We are being called to do the work, but still it may be frowned upon by ones of us who are very good at damming down or dampening down that aspect of themselves. So I think increasingly, and like you say, the current term is, decolonizing and all of those terms. If you flip it on its head, for me, requires a different conversation. We must control the narrative. We must introduce new words, new sounds, new silences where we don't try to fill up the space with English words and then we fall over those words because the words don't quite mean what these, that's not quite what I'm saying. I mean, you really have to experience it. And what you are doing, I think, is so important because those of us who are just in that kind of dilemma, you're almost schizophrenic or something else because, you're complying with this thing, but the thing is so sanitized that you can't drive home. Our ancestors can't come through because of all those other things that you're restricted. Yes, yes. And I think increasingly that is an conversation. So that you're having it in St. Croix, it's being had in the Caribbean more widely. It's being had on the continent for those of us who are waking up and saying, oh, but I'm not actually experiencing my full self. I'm not actually able to communicate with the next generation. I can't bring it through because these Eurocentric gatekeepers are telling you, what are you doing? That's not how we do it. Your reference points are too black. You're too black. You're acting a bit black.
Yeah.
So then when are you yourself? And what is the damage? What is the price you pay?
Seeing the damage every day. we're seeing the damage to our people every day. I
But
think
then what's the damage to you as well? What's the damage to us?
us, yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's like compound that damage over hundreds and hundreds of years.
Mm.
How do we come back from that is the question. I don't have all the answers. And I think maybe, it's with intentionality. Like we have to be intentional with the work we do, the food we eat, the where we spend our money, the art we make. Like we have to be intentional or else there is no coming back.
I must say, Senate Doctor and I think we're about the business of legitimizing this.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're doing. I think we are we are fracturing, we are disrupting because we're supposed to be academics. We're supposed to be, we have done the dance and passed the criteria for being allowed into this academy at this level. And here it is. We proclaim ourselves as African Queen Mother warriors. We are not prepared. We reserve the right to be African women. We reserve the right to speak of and demonstrate that we do need cultural warriors. We do need to preserve our core and our authenticity. We do need to legitimize. And so when you do what you do, you give us permission to do what we do. So we can give you permission to do what you do. And so that is how that's how the energy works. And it is our desire, it is our purpose, it is our calling to keep doing this, to keep saying, this is a legitimate space. I know how it used to be done when we were enslaved, but we are breaking free of that because that is not the one for many of us.
Yeah.
So it's okay to cry, and it's okay to laugh, and it's okay to not be sure, and it's okay to vacate the space for a while another spirit comes in, does what needs to be done, leaves, and then we come back, and then maybe we're a bit depleted. I don't know how it affects you when you have manifest spirit and delivered what you're supposed to deliver. How you were asked how you feel, but what is that like after?
Depletion.
Where are you after?
Depletion is a good word. I do feel depleted, and it takes me a while to get my bearings. Some people, a lot of people don't get it, and like after the show, they want hugs and such a great job and da 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 da. But as Dr. Jen said earlier, like I can't even talk. Like I literally don't have the language to speak.
Need to be protected during that time.
Yeah.
Like really, it's important that we remember that because you're opening up sacred space in such a powerful way, that we're required to hold space for her alongside any other artists that she may be performing with. In this case with, Gowie, the deceitful fellow, it was powerful because it was just her. But there were so many ancestral spiritual energies in the whole space. And then we were just elated to hear the words and gather the experience. But there was a lot of ancestral presence in these spaces. And, some people think they can go through a Caribbean town, any one of them, and they're all, I don't use the term, they're not haunted, but they just have ancestral presence that some have been atoned for and some have not. So of course you're going to feel that. And some people, I don't feel anything, and that's fine, because it could be that it's not for you to feel whatever needs to be felt. It's not for you to know. However, even empaths that aren't aware of what's going on, they're going to embrace that kind of energy. before I keep going, because I meant to show these before, some of the pictures that I'm sharing are actually just from that experience. And so you can kind of see what this production was really about.
Mm.
And you can get to see this is the grounds that this work was being done upon, and as you can see, Sister Queen Mother Oshana was in that space. So the theater, it wasn't a theater, it wasn't an amphitheater. It was living, telling the story in that space, right? And some people were able to get it, some people were not. And and
Yeah,
it yeah,
that's
I
the
know that
bottom.
you can imagine. You should go ahead and speak to whatever you'd like to
I was
share.
gonna say, so this is the tree where the bottles were hung. The boats actually were a piece actually that I incorporated it from August. One of my favorite plays by August Wilson is called Gem of the Ocean, and in Gem of the Ocean, the main character, she does what's called this soul washing, and part of the soul washing that was taken by Brother Janos, this
Okay.
photograph, Ray Janos. Um, in the soul washing, as part of the ritual, she takes her quote unquote freedom papers and makes a paper boat out of the papers. And so the paper boat idea came directly from Gem of the Ocean in August Wilson's Gem of the Ocean, because we all, it's a tribute to those people, all the African people that were stolen and brought and enslaved, stolen and brought and brought here in that particular way. Um, so that's where that paper book, and I used all scrap paper. It was no new paper. It was all paper that I collected, and sat and made paper boats for hours, hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of, and it really became a meditation. Uh,
Mm.
the making of the boats, that piece with the love.
Oh,
Um, um, so wherever I have done this particular work, I have brought some chalk and chalk writing on the surface. It's part of the blessing, chalk as protection, but also an homage to like the chalk drawings that you see or vivis that you see in traditional African cultures or um, practices here in this part of the world.
When
Um,
you're writing the love, do you say anything, or is it silent?
most of it is silent. Sometimes, um, I say thank you to to my ancestors. I welcome them and tell them to protect us, um, and create that space for for me to be able to perform.
Mm. So, Doctor, can you make the images bigger by any chance? Is that possible? Um, yeah, give thanks.
it's just that they get a little pixelated. So,
Yeah.
so I'll,
This
The
one,
images are very powerful.
yeah, I didn't think to get anything ready to present.
no, that wasn't the intention. We weren't trying to make it complicated. We just were giving people a sketch. They get to see the real you.
This was when I did iteration of building a better fish trap with Paloma. This is a photo from that. That was done on her father's property, her family land in Christiansted Town. And this was like an improvised movement piece that we did. This is a shot from that piece there, from building a better fish trap.
Right.
Queen Mother, may I say you are strikingly beautiful.
Oh, Thank you.
Really, you are. You
Um,
are.
thank you so much.
Yeah.
This is a shot from the Fergawi piece in town. Um, I was handing out, these were register of African women who were enslaved. I forget the actual date, but it was just, they have the name, the age, and a note. So behaved well, orderly, and
Mm.
this note about their personalities, or troublemaker, or whatever note that the
Mm.
person making the ledger wanted to put. So I was handing that out to audience
Mm.
members, and the love also comes in, just to connect it. Also, there's a line in the play when I say, you know, I was talking about the shooting of or the killing of young black men, and there's a whole long calling of names that I do in the piece, and I say, but all we need to do is love and 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 love
Mm.
and love and love and love and love and love
Mm.
and love and love, and I keep repeating love over and over and over again. And it
Mm.
seems very simplistic, but really that's what we need to do.
Mm. It the we'll call it duality, I don't know, but the things that are sometimes appearing quite simplistic are so profound. It is, I think it is our way to repeat, repeat, to bring this the it's
Yes,
almost like a chanting. It's a version of chanting to
yes.
bring to bear that which it is you are uttering. So you almost take it from the metaphysical and you're bringing it to manifest. So when I even hear you say that, even as you're saying it now,
Mhm.
it is, it's very powerful. It's simple, but it's powerful.
Yeah.
And I don't think everybody can do it. You know what I mean? Like you bring a weight to the utterance that means it must manifest. So that's why I was asking you, when you're writing it, is something else happening? Because that feels very, yeah.
It's interesting because for that particular piece, and like I said, the piece started off as my thesis project in grad school. For that particular piece, after I did the first reading that I told you I wrote in 3 hours, after class I sat with my professor probably a good 45 minutes, and she said, you know what, Oshana, um, that what happened for that, most writers wish it could happen, and it doesn't happen all the time. And we talked about the discipline of making work and writing and art and all of that, and it really doesn't. People think that there's always these and the ray of light come down and you just produce this work, but most of the time when you're creating a piece, it's a lot of work. It's work. You have to read and research and write and improvise and go back and do it and erase and and change and workshop and all of that. For that piece, though, it really was, and I can honestly say, if the words come,
English, 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 English.
I know that that there was no. I really honestly was just typing what creator told me to type.
Channeling.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. I didn't, it again, it doesn't happen for everything you write. It doesn't happen. And the things may be perfectly well, lovely pieces of work, and I don't want to trivialize the artistry of myself or anybody else who's make, because we know you can be up till 4 o'clock in the morning working on whatever it is, and people think you're not really working because you're writing. No, it's hard. It's hard work, and it's work. For that particular piece, yes, it was work because I had to go back and revise and change and all of those things. But I honestly And I told her this too, like, I don't even know if I can take credit for having written this thing because it really was spirit coming to me. No doubt about it.
Ashe.
Ashe.
Ashe. With that, we've been joined by our next guest. I am really hoping that you're going to be able to remain with us because there's some things that you've opened up. Sister Queen Mother Oshana, as a interdisciplinary artist, as an activist, as an educator, as a griot, and one who keeps ancestral African spirituality at the core of your work, to share in some pieces. Part of what I desire to share as well, and it's like a very small portion of that piece before we introduce our next guest. It's interesting to me that how we have to go and find these elements of what we bring to the table. So I'm going to just take a moment, and it's only a short piece, just so that persons can hear and experience some of what was seen during that performance in Freedom City, St. Croix, Virgin Islands. I do give a special shout out to Sister Danelle Lang for just offering this particular piece for us to be able to see, look at, and witness.
I teach you the trees and the birds. And now you don't get share. You teach everything from me, even my identity. Uhuru I need. Uhuru. Somebody gotta go, woo, woo, when blow, winds blow. Shakespeare, blow, winds blow, like the hurricane of blow. So somebody else needs to be the wind. Okay? You're gonna be bullying. Yeah. You're gonna be the wind. Okay. Are you gonna blow? You're gonna blow. Okay. Then we need somebody to play the part of the rain. Everybody. Okay. Wind, rain, wind, rain. What else do we need? They get noise, they get thunder, they get lightning. So right, so on my count. 1, 2, 3. Wind, wind, wind. Blow, wind, blow, blow, wind, 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 wind,
I'm going to pause there because I think it's important for persons to just get the essence of what was happening inside of our community in the middle of the street on the site of our illustrious ancestor, Venus Johannes, and what our sister Queen Mother Oshana was able to bring and make it call and response, and to make it a telling of the griot tradition of generation upon generation upon generation upon generation of right in this space. And for that, I encourage persons. I want to extend a special thanks, because you saw all of the people that was busy being involved and being engaged. And that's what it was. It was a lived experience. It went beyond theater. It was a lived griot telling of the legacy experience. And we're very, very grateful for Sister Oshana James just offering that. We're ooh,
That's very
ooh.
powerful. That's a very powerful thing. You know, in certain parts of the world, like the UK and Europe, anything of that nature happening on the street is almost unheard of. You would really have to, or I don't even know what you'd have to do. And certainly if you entered, a spirit entered you and you manifest, certain authorities, unless you're protected, would want to tell you some kind of nonsense. So just watching that is just like, wow, that was so powerful. I give thanks for you sharing. Wow.
We're honored to have her offer that. We're going to take I believe our brother is ready. We're going to take a quick minute, interludes, my favorite part. Play some sounds, set the tone. Again, we keep pushing Adrian Green, right? We're like, because he's going to be our guest on next broadcast. So we're so excited to be able to share, some of his voice. So while we prepare to welcome our guests, we're going to just share this piece.
Give thanks.
Now we understand how they pushed and shoved you into the dimly lit corners of their history book. But we know the truth, cause we've searched and looked to lift our minds off of Europe's hook. And some still don't understand how much strength and willpower it took to get from under their spells and propaganda. And now them a wonder how we so proud and we daishikis and we booba. We let them know we were orphaned, but we found our mother. We've been reunited with our lost sisters and brothers. Africa stretches forth her hands to her prodigal sons and daughters, scattered across the water. In this great disaster with him calling Ma'afa that was authored by those dirty, rotten, stinking, I won't say the word. But they try to kill every last semblance of African spirit and skill. But destiny must unfold, prophecy must fulfill. Emancipation is a mountain, it's a real steep hill. And to get to the top for we is such a thrill. That's why from Cape Town to Cairo, Barbados to Brazil, no matter where we were taken, we are African still, and we will heal those emotional scars, and we will reclaim everything that's ours, and we will retake our place amongst the stars, and we will redeem our ancestor. Africa, we love you. Better days must come, we see our sun shining through. The storm clouds are moving from above you.
Giving thanks for that sharing. Just an interlude of Africa, We Love You by the illustrious spoken word artist, scholar, activist, awesome brother, comrade, father, and more, Adrian Green. We're very grateful, very grateful.
Oh, okay.
And so now we have, and it's wonderful, this just worked out naturally that we have another powerful educator, a international journalist, as well as an organizer in addition to being engaged, you put the three short pieces you can put on a flyer, but if you do the whole bio, it becomes like a mini treatise in regard to the work of Baba Obi Egbuna the second. I always highlight that. I don't say junior, but I definitely encourage persons, if you're not sure of the son, definitely learn about the father, and it'll give you some context, because our beloved brother Baba Obi has been in the trenches and the work and uplifting and organizing, revolutionizing African affairs from pre-birth. I'm going to put it like that. So what he does now is quite instrumental to supporting a variety of international movements, whether they are in Zimbabwe and other parts of the African continent, whether they are in the Eurasian spaces, whether it's in the northern portions of the 48 contiguous US, whether it is in Cuba, Haiti. He is always engaged in supporting media and journalists being engaged in that work and giving the perspective and the voice of our most progressive, most revolutionary African leaders, youth, elders, and beyond. So, with that, I'd like to welcome to Building Legacy a powerful, as we customarily do, a divine,
Mm,
majestic,
mm.
regal, revolutionary brother, father, Baba. Woo!
Ah!
Obi Egbuna. I know it's always a joy and privilege to have, the diversification of how we deal with this discussion, conversation more correctly, around building legacy. And part of asking Baba Obi to join us is because this is what he does all the time. This is the type of work that he's produced. This is, working with youth and creating film and various media to speak truth to power around our African experience in a global context in multiple languages. And I'll let him speak to that. But we'd like to welcome Baba Obi. Greetings, brother. How are you?
Greetings. How are you?
I'm doing fabulous, as
Mm-hmm.
is customary. Some of the sister that you do not know, and may
Mm-hmm.
only I'll make sure I do that introduction. My
Okay.
illustrious co-host, African Queen Mother Warrior, Sister Dr. Sandra Baba
Thanks. Welcome.
Obi,
Hello, African. How you doing?
Yes. Greetings. Warm welcome.
and
Thank you.
our and one of our guests who you got a chance to see part of that work, and I know she is a perfectionist, so I should have had the more professional audio version. She's is probably sitting there scratching the back of her head. How could Dr. Chen just show something just from that? We need the more professional. However, our illustrious sister queen mother Oshana James, who is again an interdisciplinary artist and educator, activist, writer, producer, director, dancer, beyond, beyond, beyond. We're really encouraging her to keep sharing the works that she's doing, because that's part of building legacy. And Sister Queen Oshana, this is
Thank you.
Baba Obi.
Yeah.
Okay?
Nice to
Um,
meet you so
my
much.
my pleasure to meet both of you, Africans. How are you?
Very well. Welcome.
Mhm. Yes.
we've been
Thank
on the
you.
we've been on the flow, and it's
I see.
we're gonna listen, obviously. Yes, we're gonna listen for you to share with us some of the building legacy work that you've been engaged in. I definitely would appreciate more you sharing some of the work you do with your students in terms of guiding them, through multiple languages to be able to do productions and to engage in media on current events. And then, of course, speaking to the Cuban efforts that you've been involved in, and some of the first international arts exchanges that have manifested to really help our brothers and sisters in Cuba to, not only end this embargo, but to really offer the revolutionary support that is most deserving.
Okay, sure. Well, it's a pleasure to be back on here. Um, we were last on at the beginning of the year, I believe,
Yeah,
and at that point, we had done a play called The Key Swahili Explosion.
and the children in it were 8, 9, and 10 years old. And what the backdrop of it was the 14 million homeless children in East Africa were making an appeal using Kiswahili culture as the vehicle to transmit to the Kwanzaa celebrating community in North America, who represent a demographic of 45% of the homeless in the United States. And even though we're only 12% of the population, so we felt that there was a parallel there. So that's what we had done. Since then, the children did a video tribute to Dr. King. They did a video tribute to Dr. Carter G. Woodson. And in June, we just finished doing a tribute to Paul Robeson.
Nice.
So we took a poem that we've done called We All Love Our Mother. And the children recited the poem in Mugamo, a Cameroonian language, Kiswahili, Igbo, and Amharic. And that performance begins with Jackie Robinson attacking Paul Robeson at the House of Un-American Affairs Committee, when he felt compelled and obligated to let the Democrats and Republicans know that when Paul Robeson said that Africans would not go to war against the Soviet Union, that he considered it an honor to go and defend the United States. In the same vein, 20 years later, he was the first one in our community to attack Muhammad Ali for refusing to go to Vietnam. So it starts off with that in English, but even before that, people get footage of Paul Robeson talking about colonialism, talking about Africa, and talking about the Pan-African parallels and linkages between our struggle in the United States, the struggle in Europe, and the struggle in Africa. And then we go right into the children reciting the poem. And the poem, it's a very simple poem that we teach to kindergartners. It goes, I have a lot of sisters, I have a lot of brothers, I have a lot of cousins, I have a lot of uncles, I have a lot of aunties, but we all have the same mother. She's my mother's mother, she's my father's mother, she's my grandparents' mother, she's my great-grandparents' mother, she's my ancestors' mother. The mother that we're talking about is Mother Africa. The mother that we're talking about is Mother Africa. We must defend our mother in the name of our mother. We must come together in the name of our mother. We all love our mother. We all love our mother. We all love our mother. So they do it in colonial English. They do it in Spanish, colonial Spanish. They do it in Amharic. They do it in Mugamo. They do it in Igbo. They do it in Kiswahili. And that was just to pay tribute to Paul Robeson, as we know, communicating in anywhere between 20 and 30 languages to help Africans overcome the decolonization process. So that was that's the last thing that we did. So that'll be available for public consumption very soon. So that's what we ended up, that's what we've done this year so far. So we're starting in December with the Kiswahili activity, the play, virtual, of course, and then the 2 video tributes, one to Dr. King and one to Dr. Carter G. Woodson, who often goes overlooked, and then paying tribute to Paul Robeson. So next is the plays that we wrote a year and a half ago at the height of the corona pandemic. So at some point, those will be performed. You have Ready for the Revolution, which is a tribute to Akpe Sekou Toure, Guinea's first president and the leader of the Guinean Revolution, and his comrade in arms, our great sister Mbalia Kamara, who
The audio's dropped out.
Okay. Audio. Okay. You're still able to hear us?
that were massacred in the Dominican Republic in the 1930s during the Parsley Massacre, initiated by the United States stooge Trujillo, who felt that he must stop the Haitianization of the Dominican Republic. And what they did is, for people who don't know, they would line up the Africans and get them to say the word parsley. And based on the way that word rolls off your tongue, they would listen in to see if you had a French colonial accent or a Spanish colonial accent. If you had a Spanish colonial accent, they'd make you get off the streets. If you had a French colonial accent, they'd shoot you down instantly because they knew that you had migrated to the Dominican Republic next door from Haiti. So we had that one. We have another one called Decolonization, Disconnection, and Repair, which is paying homage to the work of Comandante Hugo Chavez and now Nicolas Maduro, Comandante Nicolas Maduro, and their efforts to spearhead this Afro descendant movement in the Americas, which is a directive to unite Africans, the 200 million of us in North America, South America, Central America, Latin America, and the Caribbean, all the way to Canada, the Western Hemisphere, which challenges the imperialist and white supremacist definition of America that is a treasure to Joe Biden, like it was a treasure to Donald Trump, like it was a treasure to Lincoln, to Jefferson, to George Washington, to Kennedy, to LBJ, to Taft, to all of them. So just challenging that notion and giving us a chance to unite in the Western Hemisphere. So Venezuela representing the fervor and the engine behind that process. So we felt it was of paramount importance to have a performance that would connect us to them. And something that we're still working on is a piece that some of our comrades in Guyana want us to do, which will deal with the impact of the divide between Walter Rodney, Dr. Walter Rodney, and Forbes Burnham, and the impact that it had on young people in particular. So that's what we have going on. That's what we have going on. And at some point, we would like to do those. But right now, based on what people saw, the Paul Robeson piece was a mini play, but you may see the expanded version of it by the end of the year. So we're always working in that regard. You had asked us to talk about the cultural tributes to Cuba. I want to begin with 2014, though, because from 2014 to 2017, we collaborated with Mutulu Olubala of the internationally acclaimed hip hop group Dead Prez. And we did 3 albums of music called The Battle Cry for Cuba and Zimbabwe. And we had artists from all over the world, the African world, who made music calling for the lifting of the US European Union sanctions on Zimbabwe, commonly referred to as the Zimbabwe Democracy and Economic Recovery Act, which was initiated in 2001 in vindictive response to the government of Zimbabwe reclaiming the land, our indigenous land, from 4,500 European farmers of Rhodesian and British ancestry. And prior to that, spearheading a military security initiative called Operation Sovereign Legitimacy, where Zimbabwe's military, Namibia's military, and Angola's military fought off an attempt to reinvade the Congo and reinstall the network of Mobutu Sese, who in conjunction with the CIA assassinated Patrice Lumumba 60 years ago this year. And so for those 2 revolutionary acts, those 2 acts of self-determination, the people of Zimbabwe have been subjected to sanctions. And of course, the blockade on Cuba has been a reality for our Spanish-speaking African sisterin and brethren in Cuba since 1962, on the heels of the failed invasion known in the history books as the Bay of Pigs invasion. And so that blockade has cost them nearly $150 billion. So we felt that we could use music to bring attention to that, because as Ahmed Sekou Touré taught us, to be part of the African Revolution, it's not enough to write a revolutionary song. You must fashion the songs with the people, and the songs will come of themselves and by themselves. So we did that. And then so what you saw in July of last year and in February of this year, in celebration of Cuba's efforts in Liberia, Sierra Leone, and Guinea 6 years ago in the fight to eradicate the corona pandemic, in celebration of the 4,000 medical personnel they have strategically dispersed throughout the African continent, in celebration of the thousands of African youth who are at the Latin American School of Medical Sciences training to be doctors and are going to return to virtually every African nation, virtually every Caribbean nation, virtually every Latin American nation, and be the best medical representation that those countries have ever had at their disposal. So in salute to that effort, we had these cultural tributes. So when you combine both shows together, we've had artists representing 10 African nations, artists representing 7 Caribbean nations, thanks to you, Dr. Shen, and with your help. And Brother Adrian Green, who we were listening to, was one of the participants. And so we thank him. And then from there, we had 17 US cities, artists representing 17 US cities, 5 European Union nations. And that's part of a project called the Get Out of Cuba Way movement, where we were calling for Cuban medical personnel to gain access to the United States to eradicate the corona pandemic, and also saluting their efforts because Cuba has the distinction of being the only nation in Latin America to become a vaccine manufacturer. Dare I say, a trusting vaccine manufacturer. Because when you talk about vaccinations to daughters and sons of Africa, you have to emphasize that this is a trustworthy initiative, of course. So they've had 4, one called Sovereign 1, Sovereign 2, Abdallah Mambisa. Mambisa is named after a woman revolutionary fighter who fought during the Spanish-American War in defense of Cuba. And Abdallah is after the poet Jose Marti. That just went through clinical testing and it's 92.8% effective. The most effective, the highest effectiveness rate for a vaccination aimed at dealing with the corona pandemic up to this point. And it would be wonderful if in the Virgin Islands, Abdallah was the vaccination that was available to the masses there. Then there would be no distrust, there would be no hesitation, there would be no apprehension based on Cuba's track record. And also, since I'm dealing with a demographic this evening of sisters who know the earth and respect the earth, we also know that Cuba has the distinction of having green medicine as part of their national health policy. So we were celebrating that as well. And so what our next step is in that process is in September, we're calling on Africans in the diaspora who are always talking about investing in Africa to invest in the work of the Cuban medical personnel in Africa, begin to send them medical supplies, medical equipment, and anything that they need. And this way we show reciprocity for the solidarity, which is very important. And so the initial countries we're targeting are Zimbabwe, South Africa, Eritrea, Guinea, Liberia, Nigeria, and the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and Congo Brazzaville as well. So this way we can begin to give our people an alternative to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the Bush Foundation, the Clinton Foundation, the Obama Foundation, and Doctors Without Borders, who many of them have suffered from political schizophrenia, because one minute they're acting like doctors and then the next minute they're doing their best impersonation of CIA agents. So because they can't get that together, we're more trusting of putting our resources behind Cuba's medical efforts on the African continent, not only because of their treatment, not only because of their will, not only because of their love, but the fact that when they're not training, they're not treating the sick, they're training the future doctors in the nations where they are, but they only train the ones who sign a contract that they will remain in their countries to break the brain drain. So the ones who can't, so the ones who are itching to come to London, itching to come to France, itching to come to Belgium, itching to come to London, itching to come to New York, those are not the ones they train. They train the ones who say, I'm staying put in Burkina Faso, I'm staying put in Ghana, I'm staying put in Nigeria, I'm staying put in Namibia, I'm staying put in Angola, I'm staying put in Chad, I'm staying put in the Comoros Islands, I'm staying put in Senegal, I'm staying put in Mali, I'm staying put in Mauritania. So the second phase of this project is to give them the assistance they deserve. And at the same time, giving our people an alternative, because we have to move away from this narrative of victimization. And we're gonna leave at a time where conspiracy theories are as common as horoscope predictions. We don't want part of that. One of the most beautiful characteristics of history is the challenges that it presents. And that's a challenge we want to take on. And before that, though, based on what has transpired, in the last couple of weeks, let us just say, regime change agents are such. So whether you're a regime change agent of African ancestry, a regime change agent of indigenous ancestry, a regime change agent of European ancestry, your cultural makeup and composition is secondary. If you are working with our former colonizers and kidnappers to keep us suppressed, keep us dehumanized, keep us exploited, then you're our enemy. It's that plain and simple. We're not going to let you rock us to sleep because you look like us. And because you look like us, we think that you represent the legitimate aspirations of our people.
Okay.
There are ideological distinctions to this struggle. In Kenya, some fought with the Mau Mau, some fought with the King's African Rifles to maintain British colonialism. In Zimbabwe, some of us fought with ZANU, some of us fought with ZAPU, some of us fought with the Cellar Scouts, with the British and Rhodesian Army. On the plantations in Haiti, some of us fought with Dessalines, some of us fought with Cecile Fatiman, some of us fought with Nati Boukman, some of us fought with the French. Nothing has changed in that regard. In Angola and Mozambique, some of us fought with Frelimo and MPLA, some of us fought with UNITA and Renamo. Nothing has changed in that regard. In the United States of America, some of us fought with the Black Panthers, some of us fought with SCLC, some of us fought with the NAACP, some of us fought with the Urban League, some of us fought with the National Council of Negro Women, others fought with the State Department, fought with the FBI, fought with the CIA, fought with the Navy, Air Force, Army, Marines. You make your choices. So in that regard, that hasn't changed at all. So we understand that, and we say in the name of
Good afternoon, Prince.
yeah of our spirit, fighting spirit, we have some choices to make. So what you saw transpire in Cuba, because people are talking about, and then people are saying it's resistance against racism, and the same people who are propagating that notion refuse to tell you that right now the first vice president in Cuba is an African. And this is a revolutionary who has made his way up the ranks since he was a teenager. He's not a glorified runner-up like some other vice presidents we know right now. So with that being said, that's where we are in terms of
Yeah, brother.
y'all caught that late.
No. No, everything's been caught on time.
Okay, no. So just the fact that Cuba has an African vice president right now, the first, because they have two, the first vice president, which means if something happened to, which we hope will never happen, if something happened to Comandante Diaz-Canel, he would be at the helm. And at the United Nations, the Cuban ambassador to the United Nations is an African named Pedro Luis Pedroso Cuesta. So the fact that you have a son of Africa, who, as we say in the hood, is blue-black when you talk about his complexion. So when he's your face to the United Nations, that means he's your face to the world. So you still have these people running around here talking about racism in Cuba and what have you, as an excuse not to fight for the blockade. How would a racist nation put their nation's sovereignty on the line to protect Assata Shakur and our fallen warrior Nehanda Obiadun? How would a racist nation go to Angola at the drop of the hat and fight with us? Go to Mozambique at the drop of a hat and fight with us?
Sound.
Audio's dropped out.
Right. It's okay. We're going to give it a moment. Let's give it a moment because we know that he's sharing some pretty powerful. We lost your
Yeah,
sound.
I'm back. I saw that. So the fact that the enemies of progress, the enemies of Africa, think that they can propagate that type of rhetoric, and we're going to let them get away with it. They have another thing coming, and the fact that certain things need to be reinforced. So the fact that at the United Nations last month, 184 nations voted against this blockade, but only 2 voted in favor of it. The United States and Israel, the real nation's capital. Washington is in the nation's capital of the United States. The Zionist state of Israel is. And Israel is consistent with their requiem for death for African people at the United Nations, when they voted against Algeria sovereignty at the United Nations in the 60s, Tunisia sovereignty, the only nation that felt compelled and obligated to support apartheid in what's called South Africa, support apartheid in what's called Zambia, then when it was Northern Rhodesia, apartheid in Zimbabwe when it was called Southern Rhodesia, and get this, supporting German colonialism in Namibia. So when they voted for the blockade on Cuba the other day, not only did they prove that they're enemies of African people, because if anywhere we experience progress, they feel compelled to make our lives a living hell and make things as challenging and possible for us. So we say that they could, Adolf Hitler would have been proud of the Zionist state of Israel, because unlike others who accept this watered down narrative of world history, and where Adolf Hitler stands alone in terms of fascism and terrorism and white supremacy, we say that he needs to be surrounded. He should be surrounded by Menachem Begin, surrounded by David Ben-Gurion, surrounded by Golda Meir, surrounded by Benjamin Netanyahu, surrounded by Yitzhak Rabin, and everyone who has presided over the Zionist state of Israel, because every Zionist leader of the Zionist state of Israel, when it comes to fascism, when it comes to terrorism, when it comes to ruthlessness, they will give Adolf Hitler a run for his money any day of the week. So them coming to support this blockade in Cuba, working behind the scenes to bring about regime change in Zimbabwe, we know they are enemies. And for Africans in the United States who don't look outside of the prism of the lovers' quarrel between Democrats and Republicans, they were put on notice, because what Joe Biden has demonstrated so far in the 7 months that he's been in the White House, he's not interested in being on our Mount Rushmore of white Democrats. He knows he can't replace Kennedy in your hearts. He knows he can't replace LBJ in your hearts. He knows he can't replace Lincoln. He knows he can't replace Bill Clinton. He knows he can't replace Obama. So he said, what the hell? I'll move like George Wallace used to move. I'll move like Ross Barnett used to move. I'll move like Orville Farbus used to move. I'll move like Harry Truman used to move, who created the Democrat who brought the CIA into existence and brought Israel into existence. I'll move that way, because when it's all said, and I'll move like Woodrow Wilson, who showed Birth of a Nation, the movie that was created to recruit white folks into the Ku Klux Klan. He showed that on the lawn when he celebrated his time in the White House. So that's Joe Biden walks in those footsteps. Joe Biden walks in that shadow. Joe Biden represents that lineage. And I'm sure if we were able to get to his closet, there's a nice, fresh, kept clean Klan hood in there that he's waiting for the right occasion to put over his face. So that's what Joe Biden has demonstrated so far. He's working around the clock for regime change in Eritrea, around the for regime change in Venezuela, for regime change in Cuba, and for regime change in Zimbabwe. So we know you have that sweet tooth for white liberals, many of us. He's going to test how sweet that tooth is in your mouth.
And with that being shared, and I want to give thanks for you giving us some context from the work that's being done, and then the narrative of how unapologetic we are to get to, because when we are speaking around building legacy, there's no way that in the next 11 minutes we can give the full culmination of what was shared. So we're giving thanks that you provided some context to what is taking place, because not everyone is ready. Not everyone is ready to move in that.
And since we have can I say one more thing, please, before we depart? Because not to interrupt, you know how much we respect you. And this is to CARICOM. This is to our Caribbean-born Africans that we're talking to right now about this. We have no problem.
Baba, may I interrupt you? With all due respect, that you are speaking beyond the Caribbean. You're speaking beyond the Americas.
Yes.
You are speaking into the diaspora. You're speaking to Africans all around the globe.
No. I'm 100% clear of that. But we had something in that Pan-African spirit specifically tailored for them. but it will resonate with everybody. Watch what I tell you. We know this is the 20th anniversary of the United Nations Conference Against Xenophobia, Racism, Xenophobia, and Other Related Intolerances that was held in what's called South Africa. And we know that many people went there, considered it a spectacle to be there, because the Bush administration said that the captivity of our ancestors, the Palestinian question, and reparations should not be on the agenda.
Yeah.
So that made it the place to be. But those who left Durban left in awe, because our favorite American president of all time showed up in Durban, the late Comandante Fidel Castro. And he let it be known that Cuba supports reparations for Africans throughout the diaspora. But you all know Fidel, whether you agreed with him, whether you loved him, whether you liked him, you respected him. He didn't stop there. A few years later, he let it be known we first found out he was ill and his time was limited. He let it be known that Cuba was seeking reparations for the blockade, which has cost them nearly $150 billion, money that will go towards their healthcare initiatives that we have benefited from more than anyone, their free education, every pillar of society. And Comandante Raul Castro, in front of former US President Barack Obama, let him know that they can never be normalized relations between the United States and Cuba until that happens. So we have initiated a call for restitution, repair, and redemption in the name of the Cuban people in defense of their homeland and sovereignty, because they represent homeland security. You can't come and invade someone's land and conquer them and say you secure the homeland. You're a glorified thief at best. For those who attempt to use that label, we know that imperialism depends on masquerades, be it masquerading behind a spiritual discipline, masquerading behind culture, masquerading behind language, whatever they're doing this week. But with that being said, we know that the CARICOM has invested a lot of time and labor in their lawsuit for reparations. We are appealing to them that through some vehicle they have, because Cuba is not a member of CARICOM, they're an observer, but a respected observer. And when you look at the statement that the Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines made this week and the Foreign Minister of Barbados made this week, we are asking CARICOM to support this effort to demand for restitution, repair, and redemption for the damages that the U.S. blockade on Cuba has cost the people. But we are asking, as our sister Dr. Chandra said, Africans from all over the world to support that initiative. But we wanted to let it be known that in St. Croix, in St. Vincent, in Jamaica, in Antigua, in Barbados, in Haiti, all these places, we are expecting unanimous, unconditional support for this push, because for some reason, we have allowed people to take the concept of reparations and reduce it to a cluster.
Baba, it's important. It's important to. I know, Senate Doctor. I don't want to preempt what you're going to say. In fact, I can't. But it would be. I think it would be important to have you back at some point, because I observe and I experience. It's almost like a machine gun. What you have fired up here today is very powerful information, a very informed call to action, request for support, involvement. You have called out those Africans who look like us but are not of us, are not active. It's clear that activism is given a name, and it can be assigned to certain people but not to other people. And it would be really good, I think, Senate Doctor will be able to say whether these things can happen or not, but I think it would be really good to be able to engage you I know the time is against us today, but to engage you, because there are Africans globally who are involved and are on standby. We must be united in our calls, in our strategies, in our action points, in our evaluating even that which we are doing. And so I'm going to hand over to Senate Doctor, because this can't be it. This can't be over. That you are able to give us all of this, and then we can't. We need to engage you. I'm even watching your breath. I'm even watching how you're breathing. You are not playing. I mean, I often say to people, you know, why don't you just say what you mean? I don't think I have to say it to you. Glorified thief at best was a term you used. I think you are so very polite. You are so very polite. But I can feel your fire. It is clear to me that this is not over. Senate Doctor, please come in.
I am so grateful that it was shared in that context, because I, have had the honor and privilege of seeing Baba Obi engage and do the work, and as an organizer. And that's why it's important that we recognize that as an organizer, it's about what are we going to discuss? Yes. However, what are we going to do? What is the action plan? What is the action program? So that's where that fire that we're hearing, that directed voice is coming from. Part of what we were engaging earlier was to be able to show how we're utilizing theater to bring that voice. And part of what and we'll just go over, we've done this before, we'll just go over, because it's important that if any of you, Sister Queen, Mother Oshana, if you have an inquiry, a commentary on what was shared, please share it, so that way before we close, because I know this time we're going to close, and I just need you all and the listeners bear with us, because sometimes in having these versations, we're not going to use a European timeline of 30 minutes of this and 15 minutes of that and 10 minutes of this and 20 minutes of that, because some of this has to be nurtured and massaged so we can get it forward. Did you have some reflections you'd like to share, Sister Queen Mother Oshana? Unmute, unmute, unmute.
How many times has that been said in the past year?
Yes.
Every time. Not particularly. I just wish that there was time for the conversation piece to happen. But it is fine how it is. I don't have a question right now. Let me think.
Beautiful.
Yeah. I'm going to reflect on everything. It's a lot.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
In fact, it's a lot isn't enough. English fails us. I was, I get very excited. Okay. I was very taken by the fact, people will know I say English isn't our first language. So whenever a comrade or activist, somebody comes before us and they are pulling on the tongue, pulling on different, like Amharic, like pulling on different ways of communicating. Some of it is verbal and articulated in that way, and some of it is, as our sister Queen Mother Oshana is a cultural warrior. We're bringing what we have to bring in different forms to reach us wherever we are, because the resistance that we must engage in to push off this oppression and the audacity that ones can come with when they control the narrative. They control the narrative. So they say, well, this is okay to say, and this is not okay to say, or you're allowed in these spaces and you're not allowed in these spaces. I would want to say, and there is no nice way to say bonfire upon them, right? Because as I referred to before, when you're in these institutions of higher education, you're not supposed to say things like bonfire upon them, but bonfire upon them. We have been oppressed, we have been marginalized, we use polite language to say what it is that we want to say because we want to be coherent. But as our brother Baba Obi was speaking, the words are coming. But when if you watch him,
Mm-hmm.
he is fighting. This is the breathing, the intensity. It is clear we are not playing with you. We are not interested in playing with you. Time is short. In between all of this fire that you're firing off and calling us to action globally, your child comes in, you give him a kiss, and you place him down. So what is happening is that we are building legacy. We are demonstrating what must happen in this time. And it's not an either or.
Exactly.
It is that we must do it. We must do it in our way. This is not I will go home and be a parent. I will go to the office and do this. I will then go to the field and do that. We will do all of it. However, it must be done because the time is now. And yes, we must call each other out. We must say, we can see that yes, you are melanin rich, but you are not helping, that you are an ally of the oppressor. We must also do what was happened, which is to call the governments to account. We are asking for this to happen. We are looking for this to happen. For me, if I have a question, it would be, and I don't know that we have time for it today, is what is the next step? Because we are building legacy. We can report in, but when we are calling people to action, how do we ensure that we are engaging globally? Because we can have hotspots, we can have things happening here, things happening here, things happening. But as long as there isn't sufficient blending in whatever way, when you call people to action, people over there don't know what they can do to help what's happening over there. So my thing would be, what is the next thing to happen? Now, Senate Doctor, I always defer to you because you are most majestic. You are the most potent and beloved and respected and highly revered African Queen Mother Warrior, Senate Dr. Chenzira. How do we get to the next step? Because we are about building legacy. That is what we are about. Holistically, huh?
Ish. One thing I'd like to offer, because that's a reflection of everyone that's in this particular space. What Baba Obi Egabuna has shared is what you hear him share and live and do regularly. So that's why notice there were no notes. There was no deviation from the camera. It was spoken.
He undiluted. I had to hold him to my head. I was like, woo! This is warrior. This is warrior in action.
In action. And that's part of the piece. What I would ask, and before he shares any closing commentary, is I just would like for persons to see a snippet of some of the work when he was referencing the I was going to use the Kwanzaa explosion because that's something I can get to quickly, but there was a piece that his students presented. And it's defined as Roots Kwanzaa Explosion. And I just desired for everyone to just get an idea of, again, you heard the teacher. I think it's important that we get an opportunity to hear the children. And I'm going to take a moment so that I can pull this carefully. I don't want anything else to deviate from that, but I think it's really important. Please tell me if you can just hear everything.
You've got the
Africa serikali za uvu zimekuza kabisa maskanini wake.
It is a blessing that we can talk to each other in our mother tongue on the sacred soil of our motherland.
The children in Soweto took this stand. When you understand the power of language, Rondon and Haiti was too much for the colonizer to handle. It's very easy to overcome suffering and damage.
Want the children of our colonizers to pretend like they were willing to extend a helping hand.
We take this stand.
Ni baraka tunaweza kuzungumza na kila moja kwa lugha ya taa ya mama kwenye hadithi takatifu ya mama yetu.
Kumbuka hii watoto, ndani Soweto Arajuka High School. Unapalawea nguvu ya lugha. Ni rahisi sana kushinda mateso na uharibifu. Vundun huko hii ilikuwa wakoloni kushughulikia. Tumefurahi na kunifurahi kutumia Kiswahili kuendeleza vita. Hatutaki watoto wa wakoloni kujifanya kama wako tayari kuunga mkono.
Lazima na tutachukua msimamo.
Mother Africa's wealth belongs to all her children. Are we too greedy to share it?
Utajiri wa mama Afrika ni wa watoto wake wote. Sisi na wachoyo sana kuweza kushiriki kwa kila mmoja.
No more homeless children in Africa.
No homeless children in Africa. No.
This must end!
It ends now. This ends now.
Una tena watoto wasio.
Namakandi baruni Africa.
Take a moment
Wow.
to recognize these youth that are speaking the voice of power and word sound and action and engagement. That's what's the next step. That's what I would say is to keep our children, because sometimes it's a little difficult to get this across to some of the older persons. And it's really important that we get it to those youth so that it's already ingrained in them, the way that we saw Baba Obi's youth come forward and just take a moment, engage with his Baba, and then go on in his way. The way that all of us are bringing this work to a larger audience, the way that you have been so graceful and direct, African Queen Mother Warrior Sister Dr. Sandra, for reminding us that this is not a regional thing. This is not just our circle thing. This is a global African humanity piece, and we're making sure that we reach out to everyone, because there's things going on in Vanuatu that we just don't know about right now today. There's things going on in West Papua New Guinea that affect our African brothers and sisters that we hear about, but it's challenging for us to bring that up, much less in Australia, in Mauritius, in India, because as quiet as it's kept, we did that too. And throughout the Americas, North, South, Central, North Pole, South Pole, all of it in the Caribbean. And of course, our sisters and brothers that are in Eurasia, under the cloak and chaos of more bestiality than we can even speak to, right? And all of that that has been shared, and the way that Sister Queen Mother Hoshana offered up the importance of bringing our ancestral voice unsanitized and clear
Mm.
through her work, and
Mm.
and invoking sacred spirit and bringing that in the work. If she have to do it on stage,
Mm.
break the fourth wall, in the middle of the street, on ancestral grounds, doing all of that, right? And I just needed to just offer that up. Any final reflection, Baba Obi? Because
I was just happy to be here and to meet these sisters, and I look forward to working with them.
give thanks, give thanks.
And yeah, there was one more thing. On Tuesday, we're having a meeting with the Women's Affairs Attaché at the Eritrean Embassy, which
Brother
is
Baba, Brother Baba, can you give the date, because this will be which Tuesday? So can you give
Tuesday the 27th, and it's a planning meeting for on Sunday, August the 22nd. There will be a meeting with the National Union of Eritrean Women and African women in the diaspora. The women of Eritrea will be talking about the damages that 10 years of sanctions subjected their nation to. They will be talking about the current regime change plans of the Biden administration against the people of Eritrea. And thirdly, what women in the diaspora in the fields of education, in the fields of healthcare, in the fields of people to people exchanges and linkages can do to help remedy the situation. So Dr. Chen will be one of the coordinators of that development in August. So we're just having a private planning meeting on Tuesday, but the encounter with the National Union of Eritrean Women will be on Sunday, August 22nd. We'll have more specifics about that. And for your listeners who may not know, Eritrea fought the longest armed struggle on the African continent for self-determination, 30 years. And 33% of the guerrilla fighters were women. No guerrilla struggle in the history of the world has had that level of women's participation. So that's something we can be very proud of. They've overcome these sanctions, and they are the only nation on the African continent with free education and free healthcare for their citizens at this historical moment. So history obligates us to defend their sovereignty. So the sisters are going to be talking to the sisters about what the sisters can do to elevate the African fighting spirit in Eritrea, which will feed into the African fighting spirit everywhere we are. So that's
Building
and of
legacy.
course,
Building legacy.
exactly. So and the work we mentioned about Cuba, we that appeal is all over the Caribbean right now, all over the United States, all over Europe. So as Cuba prepares to celebrate their infamous July 26th activity on Monday, by next weekend we hope to have that statement out where we're demanding restitution, repair, and redemption in defense of the Cuban people and their homeland and sovereignty. So we're calling on Africans all over the diaspora to sign on in support of this effort.
And thank you very much.
And thank you for the opportunity to come.
Thanks, everyone. We are very grateful to have Sister Queen Mother Oshana James share with us, give thanks and praise. And also Baba Obi Egbuna II to really bring truth to power examples of work that you're already engaged in. Please make sure to give us the public email and or website and or link so that we can place that inside of the YouTube pages. So
Okay. Yeah.
Just type it in the chat. If you
There
put it,
are three Instagram hashtags.
can you put it in the chat though?
Oh yes.
If you put it in the chat, that'll make it the easiest for me. And I am always grateful to my illustrious, majestic, most empowering African Queen.
I love you. I love you.
Sandra, it's always a joy and a privilege. And to our viewers and listeners, we're very grateful for you sharing and weighing in. Remember, you can tune in on the second and fourth Saturday, 3 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. GMT1 UK time to be a part of building legacy. If you have inquiries, questions, etc., you can send an email to ostspeaks at gmail.com, African Queen Mother Warriors at gmail.com. Just look for us in our respective spaces. I'm going to close today with a sharing of a video trailer that will share with you some of the great work that we have had the honor and privilege of being a part of with the Queens of the Virgins. It's a minute, and we're just encouraging persons to really look and share and embrace. We speak amongst the trees. We speak amongst nature. We embrace an opportunity to highlight the fusion of language, culture, traditional folklore, and heritage in a sacred way. We use this as an opportunity to highlight a history that is specific to freedom fighters, our women, our queens, our leaders, the backbones of our community from 1733 to 1892. So you will gather a glimpse, a vision, a flowetry, if you will, of the pluriversal impact of these particular three women. Just so that persons are clear, that is something that Sister Queen Mother Oshana James, I'm eternally grateful to you and Yahweh, David, and Darmanifa Cooper for entrusting us, Parent, to be able to bring that snippet to the world community. We're looking forward to another screening that's coming forth during Pan-African Women's Day in Los Angeles at the Chaos Center, August 21st, of the film short. So I'm very grateful, as is customary. With that, we always know that we speak to learn, teach, act, share, and build. Be a part of building legacy. We're looking forward to everyone tuning in the near future. As we shared, we will be joined by our illustrious spoken word artist, Adrian Green. With that being said, we're going to continue moving this versation forward, just speaking truth to power to the best of our ability.
Joined by Sister Queen Mut.
Mut, thank you very much. That's right, she's coming that same. Oh, it's going to be one of those dynamic programs.
They both bring life.
Check that out.
They both bring life
out, because it's going to be off. Okay, so we keep it level. Stay with us and just build the balance.
I might tell you about things you don't really care about. I might talk about some things that you never yet hear about, but them kind of things I can't fret nor fear about. I got things that need to be said and get clear out. So if you touch us on our minding, time to clear out, I bout to tear out. The things that might make you pull your hair out. I don't care if I wear out my voice. Let the truth of my whispers rise above the noise and confusion. From TVs and radio stations, devices of brainwashing and mind manipulation, causing mutated manifestations of Manipura chakras, possessing the souls of black folk with the spirit of Bakras. In these times the crackers control the wit from control towers by remote, through microchips slipped into your brains during hours of soaps and sitcoms. They tell you it means situation comedy, but really it means sit and compose comply completely with the mindsets, attitudes, and values of the prevailing system. Electronic valium to quell the people's thirst for freedom. You see them, men who should be kings like Simba, fashioning themselves as clowns like Pumbaa. Men who should be warriors like Ganga, Zumba, and Zumbi, fashioning themselves as gangster zombies, cannibalizing the flesh of their own communities. Living dead, say they rep blue or red, but it's really white that rules their heads. Some even call themselves dreads and gangster ras. What the ras are hearing? What must happen to the flock when the shepherd is a leopard who refuses to change his spots? Who will do anything to keep his spot in the spotlight? Something is not right. Music is a sustainer of life, but how can we survive feeding on vibes which emphasize the taking of lives of others like us on the inside of hard times, and advertise on behalf of guys who never buy from us unless they buy us? Music is such a rush, but something got to be wrong when every love song is really an ode to lust. That why Viagra sell out, for enough of them pipes bust from the pressure. Music is supposed to be joy and pleasure, but it will bring doom when every tune is about jam and waist walking. Got children partying in mental chains, so their feet are fast, but their minds are shuffling. Nothing will help you when the rhythms you dance to, the beats you go into trance to, fail to advance you in any way and romance you away from yourself. Your spirit wants to find heaven, but your brain is imprisoned behind 16 bars.